What's up, friends? Happy Tuesday. Welcome into the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Appreciate you joining me today. My ask of you today, if you have not yet, as of recording this, I am 20 followers or subscribers short of 10,000. I would love to get there by the start of the new year. That would be amazing. I get asked all the time, how can you support me or the brand or the show, etc. Just subscribe. That would be amazing. Let's get to 10K and then 20 and 30 and so on. We got to catch Tom Grossi somehow. And if we can't get to 10K, how can we ever do that? We've got a long ways to go, but I digress. Today, I'm going to be discussing the Packers defense and the grades and my overall film review. I could have gone over both offense and defense today. There was so much fun stuff on the defense that I want to focus on that. Plus, there were some other news and notes that I want to get to as well. So we'll talk defense in just a moment. Offense will be tomorrow. And then we'll start with news and notes first. First of all, the really good news, injury updates for all the injured Packers. It sounds like everyone is day-to-day, including Keyshawn Nixon, Christian Watson, Dean Lowry, and Yosh Nijman. So does not sound like there are any major injuries or any long-term injuries. Doesn't necessarily mean that any of them will play this week. We're going to have to see how things go through the course of the week, if they practice, if they're ready to go, etc. But it does seem like Green Bay dodged some major bullets, and it doesn't seem like anything is serious or season-ending. So hopefully, sooner rather than later, we will see those guys back on the field. So that was the first piece of good news. The other piece of news isn't really Packers related, but kind of is, and that's Nathaniel Hackett was fired as head coach of the Denver Broncos. As I tweeted out, really disappointed and sad for him. I legitimately thought there have been other coaches who have gone from Green Bay to other jobs, and I'm just like, yeah, that's not going to work. I legitimately thought Nathaniel Hackett would work in a new job. I did think that there was going to have to be a transition. And I thought him going from kind of like the fun-loving offensive coordinator who could kind of goof around and listen, he had a very serious side and he could really get results from that offense. But from going from that to leading a team and having to get everyone on the same page and just all of it, right? I did think there was going to have to be a transition there. I don't want to talk a ton about this because this is a Packers podcast, but it's just, I wanted to say, I'm disappointed that he didn't get more time. It's frustrating that, he was kind of tethered to Russell Wilson, who is just, the whole situation there is as toxic could be. And just wish that it would have resulted differently. That being said, the reason I wanted to talk about this is we've already seen the Packers with Aubrey Pleasant take a coach that was terminated in season. Pleasant was a defensive backs coach for the Lions. The Packers added him on to the offensive staff in Green Bay, kind of to do some self-scouting and some analysis and things like that. We've already seen a consultant role given to a former coach in season that was fired. Could the same thing happen with Nathaniel Hackett in Green Bay? There's a strong chance that the way this season went, maybe Hackett's just like, I just need a few weeks and let's see what happens in the offseason and maybe I can get an offensive coordinator job somewhere else. But he knows this team well. I know he has extremely strong relationships with players on this team. I'm sure Aaron Rodgers would love him back in the building. So remember, although red zone offense wasn't great in 2021, it was phenomenal in 2020, and Nathaniel Hackett received a ton of credit for the work he did. The red zone offense in 2022 has been really, really rough. Maybe you bring him in first playing to Green Bay and just say, hey, Nathaniel, all you're doing is red zone offense. Like, we're going to get you right back on that. That would free up potentially, Adam Stenavich for more time with the offensive line, which is great. They've been playing much better as of late. And maybe you just let him spend a ton of time on the red zone. I would be all in on that. And I think sometimes people get promoted to a level that they just don't have necessarily the capability of performing at. And I don't necessarily think that that's the case with Hackett. I doubt he's going to get another chance. If he did, I'm sure he'll learn from some of the mistakes that he made in Denver. But just because he was a poor coach in Denver does not mean that he can't be a very good offensive coach that helps you in the building in some capacity. I, for one, would love to see Nathaniel Hackett reunited in Green Bay. That offensive coordinator job's not open, but you don't have to, tether him to the team for next year and the year after. Bring him back in for these 2 weeks. And if you make the playoffs, he's here for that too. I'm sure there can be a benefit to that over these next few weeks. Gets Hackett back on his feet a little bit. So I'm all in on that. Would love to see it. And hopefully we see Hackett back in Green Bay soon. If not, certainly still wish the best for him moving forward. All right. I want to go over defense because there's so much fun stuff to talk about, and it's going to take me the vast majority of time just to get through all the defensive notes. So again, we'll talk about offense tomorrow, but I wanted to start by the beginning of this game because we saw two real Jekyll and Hyde defenses from this Packers team. We saw a first half that was abysmal up until the Jarran Reed forced fumble and recovery. And then a second half that had, basically held them to a field goal attempt, which they missed, and then pick, game over, right? So two totally different halves of football. The Dolphins were so explosive in the first half and then couldn't really get anything going in the second half. We already heard the story of Jerry Gray and getting after his defensive backs in the locker room, et cetera, et cetera. What I saw when I watched this tape very, very closely is I saw a offense in this Mike McDaniel Dolphins offense that kind of took Joe Barry and the defense to task a little bit, not necessarily a fault of Joe Barry. What I kind of mean by this is you could tell that Mike McDaniel and this offensive staff picked up on some Packers tendencies and found ways to exploit this Packers defense. They found some certain, some reads and some calls that Green Bay makes in certain situations, and they found ways to exploit it. And they spammed the heck out of those calls early and often. This was a beautifully scripted. Remember, the Dolphins only had 50 snaps of offense in this entire game. And almost all of their success, those 20 points, came on about the first 20 to 25 snaps on offense. Might have even been less than that. I would be willing to bet that they had a call sheet of about 15 to 20 plays where they picked up on keys and tendencies on this Packers defense. And like I said, they spammed the heck out of it. They took advantage of every opportunity. Now, Green Bay made poor plays on the back end, some of the tackling, the Jalen Waddle 80-yard play, just letting, Tyreek Hill get past you in the secondary, a safety, not getting back. Rudy Ford, I believe it was on that specific play on the big Tyreek Hill catch. There were certainly things that the Packers defenders did wrong in, kind of in conjunction with what the Dolphins were doing on offense, but you could tell that they picked up on some tendencies. They had some very specific play calls to take advantage of those tendencies, and they did it early and they did it often, and it was 20-10 Dolphins, and everything looked like it was going in their direction. And then those 20 to 25 scripted plays, those things that they saw on tape that they thought they could take advantage of, they were done and they were gone. And then it was just this kind of Dolphins offense versus this, a Packers defense. And you saw some of the advantages that they got from some of the things that they picked up on tape, some of the tendencies dissipate. And it just, all of a sudden, it was just football. And a couple things. I give Mike McDaniel a ton of credit. I think he's an extremely smart offensive mind, and I think he does a great job of finding ways to exploit defensive matchups. That's just who he is as a coach. He is a extremely scheme-oriented, bright mind that can pick apart little things in opposing defenses, find holes. That's not a Joe Barry criticism. That's something that Mike McDaniel is just able to do. That's who he is as a coach and as a strategist offensively. So give credit to Mike McDaniel on that. But once those plays, again, dissipated and they were out of those, then the Packers defense really was able to kind of shut the Dolphins down for the remainder of the game. As I mentioned yesterday, 2 carries for 30 yards for Mostert to start the game, and then the running game couldn't do anything after that. And once all their kind of fun, not gadget plays, but just, kind of planned plays were out of the equation, Green Bay kind of had answers to everything. Their zone defense worked pretty darn good. They're able to pick off 3 passes. Jarran Reed forces a fumble, and Green Bay just kind of outplayed them after that point. So give Mike McDaniel credit for finding some of those things and scheming open players and getting Tua in advantageous looks. And Tua made some ridiculously, good passes early in this game to take advantage of those looks that Mike McDaniel was able to get him. And then after that, it was a lot of really good Packers defense. So much so, in the first, or right before the Jarran Reed fumble, this defense had a negative 4.0 grade, which is a very, very, very bad grade, especially for not even a full half of football. After that, for the remainder of the game, they graded plus 4.05. So they ended with a positive plus 0.5 grade in this game. But you could not have a bigger gap in how this defense played from pre-Jarran Reed fumble to post-Jarran Reed fumble -4 to +4.05. I'm not sure I've ever seen anything like that. And again, I think a huge part of that is just what Miami had planned, and Green Bay didn't have answers for it early. I think Green Bay reacted probably a little bit too slow, but they were able to, kind of right the ship. I think some of the things that Jerry Gray said at halftime, I'm sure worked. The secondary was much better in the second half. They benched Rudy Ford, which we're going to talk about more in just a moment. And overall, the adjustments that Green Bay was able to make, I think, were sound and smart, and Joe Barry deserves credit for what they were able to do in the second half. The defense was night and day better in the second half performance. Now, you don't have an epic second half performance and you just kind of, a comeback like that without a extremely strong performance from a couple players here and there. And I think it's been a real hot second. Like, think in your head right now, when was the last really, really impressive defensive performance that the Packers have had? It's been a while, right? Like, that a player on the Packers defense just kind of took over the game. Rashawn Gary, we certainly saw earlier in the season from time to time, looked like he, was kind of doing that for moments in a game, but haven't really had a Packers defender that just kind of took over. Jarran Reed in this game, I'm not going to put him in that category and just saying that he took over the game, but he had a extremely impressive performance in this game. And the forced fumble, he had a half sack with Kenny Clark. He recovered that fumble. He had a couple run stuffs, was getting pressures into the backfield. This was my highest graded defensive performance of the season for anyone on the Packers defense, just barely beating out a couple of really nice performances from Kenny Clark and Rashawn Gary earlier in the year. And I thought, even without the forced fumble and the fumble recovery, which was, like I said, I think a season-changing play, even without that play, Jarran Reed would have ended with a extremely strong score in this game for his performance throughout the course of the game. But add in there a massive forced fumble and fumble recovery at a time where this Packers defense and this Packers team needed it more than ever. That is a huge play, graded as such, and then backed it up through the remainder of the game with a really strong performance as well. Like I said, top graded defensive performance on the year for any player was Jarran Reed in this game. Number 2 was Preston Smith. Love this performance from Preston Smith. His second highest grade of the season, only week 2, had a slightly higher grade against the Bears, but he was all over the place, coming up with big pressures. He had a sack in this game. He had a couple of stops in the backfield, and it was at opportune time, like when they needed it most as well. He had the pressure on one of the interceptions as well. This was just a really, you could tell he was kind of feeling himself. Like, he was just kind of making moves, doing some, it almost looked like he was like a basketball player at time out there playing edge rusher. And Preston kind of gets in those modes from time to time. And when he does, you can tell he's kind of feeling himself and that he's ready to go get after the quarterback. That's the Preston that this team needs for the remainder of this season. With no Rashawn Gary, it really puts this Packers pressure package, up against it, because Kenny's always going to be a slow burn guy. Devondre's coming on a little bit. Jarran and Lowry and Slayton aren't pass rush guys. And Igbare is a nice, day 3 pick that is really looking promising, but he's not quite there yet. It's not going to be Justin Hollins or Jonathan Garvin. They just need a really strong remainder of the season from Preston Smith. They got it in this game, and it was a huge, huge difference and a real reason why the Packers were able to come out with a win. As mentioned, Rudy Ford was benched in this game. Darnell Savage was back. He played a lot. We also got some Tariq Carpenter and some Innis Gaines as well. I think Carpenter got 3 snaps. Gaines probably got 12. Just really enjoyed seeing those guys out there. It was fun to see a couple new players. Gaines had a couple, iffy plays here and there. Had a couple nice plays. Had a really nice tackle at the line of scrimmage. But overall, those two graded about equal combined. Liked what I saw from both of them. It's just kind of fun to see those guys out there, especially Innis Gaines. I'm excited to see if he can, what he can do, and if he gets some more playing time in this defense. I was surprised that Rudy Ford got pulled so quickly because he hasn't been playing great these past few weeks. He played so well for about a 4 or 5 game stretch, kind of out of nowhere. He's come back to earth the last 3. He had a really tough game in this one. Just wasn't in the right spots. Wasn't playing as aggressively. I was just surprised that they completely pulled him to the point where Savage came in and completely took his spot. And then even when, they went in nickel or in nickel and dime situations, then it was Innis Gaines and Tariq Carpenter. Ford got taken out completely. Maybe there was some injury that went along with that. I don't think so, because there was no reported injury. and he still played special teams after that. So it didn't seem like that was something that was an issue, but maybe it was. We'll see this week if he has any sort of injury designation, but it seemed like he got pulled, not just for Darnell Savage, but they put Carpenter, and Innis Gaines ahead of him as well. So that was really interesting. And I was surprised just based on his play overall this season and what he's brought to this defense that they had such a quick trigger that they were just like, you're done, you're out of there. And maybe there were extenuating circumstances. We don't know the full story. But if it was just a clean pull and that was it, a little surprised that he got pulled. Like all of a sudden, now Innis Gaines and Carpenter are playing ahead of him. That seemed pretty crazy. We'll see what happens and transpires this week and if Ford can get back on the field at defense. But the reason I also wanted to bring that up was Darnell Savage. My lowest graded player on the team this year, I know for sure defense, and I'm 99.9% sure on the team, is Darnell Savage. I've been extremely harsh on Darnell Savage all year. I believe all of it is deserved. I thought he had a extremely tough season. He looked different in this game. I'm not saying he looked like a Pro Bowler. I'm not saying he looked really good. He looked different, and I'm hoping that message sent, message received, because he looked more active. He looked more willing as a tackler. He looked better in coverage. He just looked different and he looked better. And it was a positive sign of hopefully something that he can do to turn things around. There is no question. And even when I have been harsh on him with my grades and my analysis of him throughout the course of this season and last season, I've said the same thing over and over. I believe Darnell Savage is an incredibly talented player. He is not a player that has come close to matching the talent other than 2020, which I thought was a nice season for him. He has not matched the production and the overall play on the field with the talent that he has. I still believe that he can be a positive player for this defense. We saw it in this game for the first time really all season. Like I said, I am very hopeful that the message was sent and received, that he got clean benched for the past few games. And there was after he got demoted to dime defensive back, he got the injury and then came back, and he's played a couple of snaps here and there since he got the demotion, but it was a clean demotion to dime defensive back. And then he got put back in, and from all accounts, he has been a consummate professional throughout the entire time. And I'm really hopeful that this is the moment in Darnell Savage's career that he realizes, all right, I got to work at this. I got to be the best player that I can be day in and day out, practice in, practice out, game in, game out, etc. If that's the case, remember, Darnell Savage's contract is fully guaranteed for next year. The only way that they get off of that is by trading a pick for some team to take that contract. I don't think they're going to do that. That's not what the Packers generally do. I think they'll try to do something to maybe do maybe a slight extension on that to save some money, etc. But they need him to be better. He's got a guaranteed deal. It looks awful right now. If he can just play like he did in this game, and you're probably thinking, I don't even remember Darnell Savage in the game. Exactly. You don't remember Darnell Savage from the game. That's perfect. He played like, I want to say 30 some snaps, 20, 30, 40 snaps, somewhere there, probably in the 30s, I think. Or it was low snaps. I'm probably 20, 30s. Either way, whatever amount of snaps that he played enough that he was out there a lot and you didn't notice him. And he made a couple of nice plays, a couple good plays in coverage, tackled better. We just saw a different Darnell Savage. Hopefully, like I said, he can do that continuing for the remainder of this season. We'll see if he actually gets his spot back, whether that's in base, nickel, dime, etc. And hopefully this is the turning point in his career. And they need him next year. They really need him. Amos is almost assuredly going to be gone, I think. I really do think. And that safety position has a glaring hole. Rudy Ford's a free agent, and he just got benched. There's not a lot of answers at safety. You don't want to go and they're not going to have money in free agency to go out and spend and pay a bunch of high-end players. They need Darnell Savage to be good, and this was a really nice sign that maybe he can still be a player for them moving forward. 25 snaps does not a turnaround make. He has a lot to prove and a lot to still overcome, but if he plays like that, there is some promise there moving forward. All right, couple interceptions that I wanted to break down really quick. Devondre Campbell's pick, really fun. I posted the video on Twitter. Check it out. But he has this. So Alec Ingold, the Bayport grad, if you're from the Green Bay area, he motions into the backfield. He was kind of in like an H-back spot, and then he motions into the backfield. And Campbell notices it, identifies something. Tyreek Hill is in the slot to his right, and he kind of identifies that Savage is behind him, and he gets Savage to know that he's going to have one-on-one with Tyreek Hill. If Tua's looking left and Tyreek goes in the slot, Hill probably picks up an easy, 10, 12 yards, and maybe he could do something more explosive with it. But either way, Campbell gets Savage to go make sure that he has Hill in the slot. Hollins comes off the edge. Hollins was kind of in the vicinity. Hollins comes off the edge. He was just an edge rusher on the play, but he could have dropped into coverage. He ends up coming off the edge. And then, so he motions Savage to get Hill. And then he motions Quay to push left. And as it's kind of doing that, it's kind of open up the seam for Tua, at least what it seems. But so he mentioned, he gets Savage, he gets Quay. Quay's actually kind of going in the right direction anyway, but he's making sure Quay goes out there. And as soon as that ball is snapped, he ranges to his left, picks off the pass. It was a really cool, just overall aesthetic, and just you could see like the type of field general that he is out there, calling the plays, getting everyone positioned, making sure Savage is in the right spot, identifying the motion on what the offense is doing, getting everyone lined up, like I said, Savage, and then Quay. And then as soon as the ball is snapped, screaming to the left, making really picking it clean with his hands, and then starting to take it in the other direction. Really, really fun, play overall from Devondre Campbell. And then I wanted to talk about the Rasul Douglas pick at the end. And I should mention one of the other notes that we learned during this week, or yesterday, I should say, is that Tua was at some point concussed. It looks like it's on a play where Enigbare tackles him, and it was after Tua kind of flipped the ball forward, and then his head kind of had the whiplash and hit the back of the field. Tua stayed in the game. Remember, Tua had a ton of issues with concussions earlier in the season, so you hate to see this. But if he did have a concussion, it could go in some way in explaining why he struggled immensely in the second half of this game. But I want to go over that last play on defense, because if you watch it, it's really, really fun. So Tua does a really, really poor job. And again, accident forgiveness here if he legitimately was concussed and not being able to process things correctly. But he does a really poor job on the play of identifying the defense. So you get the whole picture, right? And as a quarterback, you want to be able to read kind of everything. So he sees he's got a wide receiver in the slot and a wide receiver outside. All right. The wide receiver is going to come inside. I think it's Tyreek Hill, but the wide receiver is going to come inside, and then the slot receiver is going to run, a quick, deep corner route, right? So he looks at the pre-snap, and Rasul's on the outside wide receiver, and then he sees Amos deep back safety. All right, Amos is not going to have a shot at this on the corner route where the slot wide receiver is going. He knows pre-snap that Amos probably has zero shot at getting to this play. And then there's another player inside. I can't remember if it's a linebacker or who it was, if it's a safety, whatever. It doesn't really matter. I think it was a linebacker. But there's another play on the inside. They're going to have no chance. They're going to be completely out-leveraged by the wide receiver as well. The wide receiver is going to get to that corner route. He's going to get to that spot. And the only player that he has to really worry about is Rasul Douglas. And this is an easy read, right? If this is man coverage, this wide receiver running the corner route is going to be wide open, and he's going to hit him in stride, and it's going to be a quick 15, 20 yards out of bounds. Perfect play. If it's zone coverage, Douglas is going to move off, and he has to know that he cannot probably get that ball in there, and he's got to figure out something else. Maybe he just comes to the easy play on the inside. Green Bay's kind of giving that to you, knowing that they're going to make the tackle in the middle of the field. The clock's going to run. They'll give you 8 to 10 yards, and they'll take 30 seconds off the clock. So that's what Tua has to read on the play. So he goes, and the ball is snapped. He's looking to his right. He's looking at, kind of what's developing down the field, what Amos is doing, what is, making sure that he knows where his receiver's going. And he's looking at Rasul Douglas. If he looks at anything else, if he identifies pre-snap or looks at anything else pre-snap, and even post-snap, he's going to see zone. Like there's like 6 or 7 other players that are all extremely clearly in zone coverage. It's not even a question. This is zone coverage. And so, but he's looking straight at Rasul. He makes that pre-snap read of, I've got 2 receivers. If it's man, I just have to read this, right? If it's man, I can hit the receiver on the deep corner easily. If it's zone, I probably just come to Tyreek and let him work some magic, and maybe he does something awesome. All right. So he's looking at that wide receiver, and he sees Rasul come up on the wide receiver on Tyreek, Again, I think it's Tyreek. But he comes up on the outside wide receiver, kind of presses him a little bit, and he kind of starts to go with him a little bit. And if you're looking at that point, you could see where Tua's thinking like, all right, we got man coverage. I'm going to have this wide receiver wide open. The issue is like a tick after this, Rasul looks up at the quarterback, and he's kind of still drifting with the wide receiver a little bit, but he looks up at the quarterback. And this is an easy tell for any, quarterback in the league. You see eyes on you, we're in zone. All right, so as soon as Douglas gets eyes up, that alarm bells, red flag should be going off. All right, zone coverage, zone coverage, zone coverage. I can't throw this ball. And Douglas does a fantastic job of really kind of making it look, he's up on the line, kind of pressing the receiver, starts going with the receiver, and kind of eyes up late. But Tua does a horrible job of diagnosing it. Doesn't look at anything else on the field. If he looks at anything else on the field, he's going to ID zone immediately. But the one player that kind of made it look man was Rasul, and Rasul baited him on the play. All the credit in the world to Rasul. And then, on after the play, after he kind of goes with the receiver, Rasul backs up back in that zone. To complicate matters even worse, Tua throws a bad pass. If he hits him, like if it's closer to the sideline, it might still be because Rasul was kind of drifting inside and then backed up, so he's still on the inside a little bit. If Tua throws this to the outside, would have been really interesting. I think Rasul probably still gets a hand on it, but there might have been an avenue where Tua still could have completed that pass. I just don't think he had. I don't think he was expecting Rasul to back off into zone at all, but Rasul backs off. Tua throws it right to him. Game, set, match, Rasul in the Green Bay Packers. So poor read by Tua. That's why you cannot lock in on just one small area of the field, because one player can fool you. It's really hard for 11 players to fool you. And if Tua would have been looking at the whole field and would have, at the snap, taking a look right to see what Rasul Douglas is doing, come back center and just kind of get a quick snapshot of the entire field, that snapshot's going to tell him zone and immediately is going to tell him, okay, can't throw to that receiver. And then even if he just looks at Rasul, the moment those eyes come up, it should have been a tell, and it should have been something that he doesn't throw. But I think as soon as he saw Rasul put hands on Hill and start traveling with him, it sent man coverage. He didn't look anywhere else. Throws the ball, picked off. Like I said, game, set, match, Packers. So some really fun stuff in this game. Really nice job by the Packers defense getting back in it. 3 interceptions in the second half. The forced fumble by Jarran Reed. Huge game for Jarran Reed. Highest 3 graded players, Jarran Reed plus 1.9, Preston Smith plus 0.7, Devondre Campbell plus 0.45. The lowest 3, Quay Walker, negative 0.95, Adrian Amos, negative 0.8, Rudy Ford, negative 0.6. Really, really tough game for Quay Walker in this one. It was all over the place, missing gaps, missing assignments, not dropping deep enough in zones, not getting off of blocks. It was a perfect storm of rookie wall, just not strong play. Probably his toughest game, I would say. There may have been a game that I graded him lower. I'm not sure off the top of my head without looking at it, but off the top of my head, that was the toughest that I can think back of. And just you go through it and watch Quay in this game, and there's almost no positives to take away. Just a really, really tough performance for him. So hopefully something that he can bounce back from. Amos just doesn't have the foot speed, isn't just the same player that he was the past few seasons for Green Bay. And then we already talked about Rudy Ford. All right, that is going to do it for me today. Thank you so much. Like I said, please make sure to subscribe. So close to 10,000 followers. Appreciate all of you who are following already. Appreciate you even if you're not following and you're just along for today and this was your first experience with it. Welcome to Pack-A-Day. I do this 365 days a year, so I will be right back here tomorrow. But until next time, and as always, go Pack-Go.